Coach Thatcher, great first session.
Thank you.
Here's my thing. That stuff was incredibly boring to people who don't know what they're looking at.
Yeah.
To me, that is the essentials, how you should start every match,
Yeah.
and how you should begin to attack people and crowd people and head hands.
Yeah.
What you were doing was like building blocks of being super successful and pesky towards other people.
Yeah.
Right? We were talking about earlier, Nate Burnett, he's real good head hands, right? And then he beat a really good guy in Fargo. He beat a 4-time state champ in Fargo, a guy that's going to Oklahoma State. What's the key to you? Like, sometimes this stuff's boring. How do you keep it so that kids can stay engaged in what you did? Your session was really good.
Yeah, it's hard. I think they feed off of the passion we bring as coaches, and you got to keep them engaged. It's baseline fundamentals, and like you said, it's boring. It's just you try to keep them engaged any way you can, and each group's different. You got to find what buttons to push. I think they did a good job, and you got to keep it moving. You got to keep it moving. You let them start talking, let them start slacking a little. It gets away from you.
You didn't do any of that. It was awesome. Like you're saying, it was really good.
Yeah.
Like, I wish my kids actually would have been here for it, just to see grab and wrists, shooting. I love how you were shooting to a tie.
Yep.
That is like a lot of people don't teach that.
Yeah.
I remember my brother Tate, like his junior year of high school, he really started shooting to ties,
Yep.
and nobody knew how to solve it, and he won a state title.
I think if you go and watch the high level kids tournaments, or even high school, it's making contact, establishing contact is the biggest flaw you see. And if you can teach kids how to safely get to where they score and protect your legs at the same time, it's the key to wrestling.
Winning position. That was the position
position.
that when you're talking winning position, that means like, hey, you are in a position to take people down.
Yep.
Right? You are in a position to win each match.
Yep.
And then when you talk about, hey, if I told you if you could get in this position 5 or 6 times a match to beat the best guy in the state. No, that's great, and I don't think a lot of people think like that.
Yeah.
Where does that thinking come from?
Probably being lucky and being around a lot of good coaches throughout my whole life, just learning from different people, matching what I like from this guy and that guy, what I found out worked for me and what didn't work for me. I think I remember coming out of high school being a pretty good wrestler, and then you go into a good college wrestling room, and it might be 3 months before you get the first takedown, and you start realizing like you got to learn how to wrestle. So after spending close to 20 years in a college wrestling room and watching 4-time after 4-time after 4-time state champ come in and struggle, you start seeing where they need the most help. And you can't just shake hands and go grab someone, pick them up and throw them down. You have to have some kind of tactic. Most people, there's some freaks out there, but it's just finding winning tactics and what helps kids. So,
in the last 25 years, you've been a part of 2 of the best programs ever, right? And if you go to Oklahoma, if you talk Oklahoma, you were in Oklahoma, right?
Yeah.
That's what the last 50 years, right?
Traditionally, actually done better than Penn State and Ohio State throughout the years.
Yeah, and the last 50 years, you'd put Oklahoma above those other 2. Yeah. That's what's wild, and a lot of people don't know that because they don't go back far enough in the history to Danny Hodge even, right? Yep. So when I look at that, you've been at the 3 of the 5 most successful college programs in the last 50 years, right? Yeah. Oklahoma, Ohio State, Penn State, right? It's not up for debate. It's literally, if we went and looked at counted team titles, that's what it would be, right?
Sure.
So when we look at that, you've been at such a high level. Mm-hmm. Logan Stieber's a killer.
Yeah.
I mean, you were there for that. We talked about it. You coached in the greatest heavyweight match in the history of NCAAs, from Lesnar to Neal. Yeah. You were the next closest thing with Snyder and Gwiz. Yeah. So you've been there. You've done that. You've been all around. When you take all of it and you're in a youth wrestling room, are you ever like, oh man, I was at the highest point you could be in college? How do you stay grounded? I guess
I tell everyone that I love and cherish all the memories and experiences I got from coaching at some of the best programs and some of the best athletes, and getting to coach overseas and wrestle overseas. The last 4 years I've been with the younger kids. I almost wish I would have started this 20 years ago. The younger age kids, if you can get them where they don't have bad habits, and what you teach them they start doing, and then you see them making it a little bit of their own, it is a blast, like an absolute blast. I've got some kids that are absolute world beaters right now that have just started training with me this summer, but they're coming from other programs. And the bad habits that are formed are so hard to break. And it started reminding me a little bit of college, where you get a 4-time state champion or a 3-time state champ. They've been winning their whole lives, and they think they can come in and not change anything when they're still learning to do. And that breakthrough, I had that with Miles Martin a little bit, where we butted heads a little bit at the beginning. He was like, well, I don't do that. I don't do this. And I was like, okay, you got to work through those battles, and then you start meshing. It's good. These little kids, to me, it's no, I don't care if I'm in Madison Square Garden or at Youngstown at OAC or in the Bishop Watterson gym. It's still coaching to me. And I love these young kids. It's a blast.
You're super into it. Like, I never 100%. Get that vibe ever, like that he's like, man, this guy doesn't want to be here. I never get that vibe. I always get like he's stoked on being here.
This is my passion.
That's hard though.
I told Jared in an interview I did with him, it's like my other church or my other drug. Like, I don't do drugs, but it's like, it really is what gets me going. Outside of my wife and kid and my mom and dad and brothers, I'm a very, very lucky guy. I get to do what I love to do 7 days a week.
Where does it go from here? You know, you guys, this is the Watterson room. It's also the Crazy Coach room.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here, and where do you go? Do you follow a high school team? What do you do as far as your coaching?
So yeah, this hasn't really been announced yet, but I'm going to be a Watterson coach, Bishop Watterson coach. We've been building their community team up for the last 5 years. So in the next 2 to 3 years, you're actually going to see some freshmen this year that we've been working with coming in. But they didn't have a program 4 or 5 years ago. And with Tommy and Phil Englam and a couple other people, we've been building this program up, and it's time for me to step in and start helping the high school team, the junior high, and continue. My club will always be my first priority, the Crazy Goats. But as you know, Tommy's club, his community club, the Little Eagles, my club, we work together. All the kids are starting to get older, so we're going to keep feeding them up, the newer and younger kids. But I'll start 2 days a week. I'll be with the high school team this year. 4 days a week I'll be with the junior high, and I'll have my Crazy Goat club. And next year I'll be a full-time coach at Bishop Watterson. So, and people don't know it because, you know, Bishop Watterson, I think last year or the year before was the first year they were actually back to being a high school team. No one knows what we've been doing the last 5 years.
I do, because I see it. I see it on the OAC stuff.
See it, but we're going to come out of nowhere.
Well, not really. Not after the.
Yeah, it's. I'm excited. The families and the kids have been together for a while now, and it's going to be fun. Tommy sent me a text like 3 a.m, I think, last night. He's on vacation. He probably couldn't sleep, and he's like, I can't wait for the next 10 years. Like,
that's awesome.
We're going to change so many lives. Help kids get to college. Help kids learn how to be good fathers and parents and husbands in the future. It's what we love, and I'm getting chills. Look at that. I'm getting chills just thinking about it.
Okay, so you're a Reedy guy. The last Central Ohio team to win the state championships in the state of Ohio, any division, I want to say is Reedy. Was it like the DeSabato, Ken Ramsey team? I want to say 87.
It was after that.
88.
It was 90 or 91 maybe.
So early 90s.
So you had Dom DeSabato, you had James Smiles, you had Brian Cruz, Jason Amicon. I believe that team won when it was in Xavier. I think Xavier.
Oh yeah, Cincinnati.
It was the year before it went to
Cincinnati Garden. That was the horrible venue.
I was a little kid.
Horrible venue.
But
they won in the 80s too.
Oh yeah.
They won with Ken Ramsey, and they won with the DeSabatos.
Bob Stoll was the coach.
Yes.
Bob Stoll and Mickey Ballmer, who was my coach, took over after that. But as a kid growing up, DeSales and Reedy were powerhouses, just 2 different divisions.
Yeah. Zemmer's the first four-timer.
But this was like, I'm sure there's other places in Ohio that do this, but like when there was dual meets, it was like, if the gym only held 3,000-4,000 people, there were 6,000 people in there.
Yeah, Maple. I went to a Maple Walsh duel like that. Ed's Walsh duel. I've been to. Yeah, it's crazy.
That's how I got to grow up learning
really
wrestling.
Cool.
And then at Xavier, when I was at Cincinnati Gardens, it was the first trip my parents let me go anywhere without them. So I was the little kid that went with the high school team and got to watch them win state.
Wow.
It was pretty neat.
So that carried you. Okay. Can you guys replicate that at Watterson? Can you guys do in Central Ohio what those teams did in Central Ohio?
Yeah, there's no doubt. We're doing it the right way. We care more about the journey. Here's the funny thing. I think Tommy and I both, and this gets cliche, say it all that, we both like to keep score. We're both competitive. We want to win. If the next 10, 15 years we never win a state title, it's not going to change the outcome or the goal of what we were doing. I'm biased. I think we're good enough in the product that we're starting to turn out already. We're going to win state titles. If it doesn't happen, listen, if the kids have good grades, they're good kids outside the wrestling room and they're fighting hard, and whatever success they have, it gets them to that next step in life, we're going to be happy. But I don't see, I'm probably sounding cocky and arrogant here, but I don't see with what we've been teaching for the last 5 years and the kids we have, if they continue to love wrestling and we keep building up the next group and the next group, I don't see how we don't. I think we care about doing it the right way, if that makes sense.
Okay, you guys in your Central Ohio diocese do a really bizarre thing. It's really bizarre.
Yeah, you got to live where you live.
Got to live in the district of the school that it's bizarre. I've never heard of it.
It keeps it fair.
Yeah, no, I'm just telling you, like I talk to people out west. They're like, what is this thing? Because Colin Palmer does some stuff out west. They were telling me Palmer's guy's got to live in the district, but it's a private, it's a Catholic school. And I'm like, no, that's what they do in Central Ohio. Yeah. And it threw a lot of people off. They don't get it. Yeah. So where did you live in West Columbus? Where did you actually live that you went to Reedy? And the Sabados grew up in West Columbus, right?
Yeah, I lived 3-4 blocks away from Bishop Reedy. It was easy.
So it's West Columbus.
Yeah, it's like the hilltop. It's the west side of Columbus.
Okay. And then if you live in Dublin, you go to Watterson.
Dublin. I don't know where the cutoff is, but I know, like, I live over in Hilliard, and that whole area where I live all go to Watterson. I believe Dublin kids go to Watterson as well.
Okay. And then
but they have their checks and balances. I mean, you go and you talk to the principal, the deacon, you talk to the person in charge of attendance, and you know before anything gets started, like, this is your school. You have to go to the school. And we're not going to be in the game of trying to load the deck. We don't want to raise kids up for the last 5 years and then bring people in and they don't get a spot to wrestle in. We're going to build it up our own and go attack.
Eagles Community Club ultimately is those are your first goats, those are the kids that are going to be Watterson kids. Yep. That's you know what I mean, because Palmer's at DeSales and now because they're North and West Columbus or North and East Columbus, I believe.
North and East.
Yeah. So that's DeSales.
Yeah, like I think what I believe is like the Olentangy, that northern west, just above Dublin, is almost like right in between where you get to choose boom or boom.
Wow.
There's a couple areas.
Because that'd be Reedy or Watterson, right? Yeah, that's crazy to think. Because people don't understand it, though. Like I was trying to explain it to people out in the Idaho and Washington. They didn't get it because they'd never heard of that. Yeah. Because I think you're one of the only major cities in America that does that. Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
It might be. I've never thought about it because I grew up where I lived. I went to school. And that's what we're going to do at Watterson.
Ultimately, moving forward, what's the ultimate goal? Obviously, state championship for Watterson's a goal for you, but what do you want to see out of the Crazy Goats? What do you want your Crazy Goat kids?
Just development and keeping the kids loving wrestling. There is a huge drop-off, what I found, and Jared kind of confirmed it at that Division III, Division IV level. When the kids were little, they'll all look up to you. They'll listen to everything you say. They're happy. You keep it fun. But when they get to a certain age where they start learning, they can, say no to mom and dad or no to coach. It's like if they don't love wrestling, they're not going to be any good at it. So it's just keeping them loving the sport. And it's hard because we're in a hard sport. So it's a double-edged sword. You got to teach them what adversity is. You got to teach them how to get through adversity, but also to have fun. And so I think I do a very good job at that. I think that's what I do the best at. Not to pat myself on the shoulder, but I think it's keeping the big picture of everything. Like, wrestling isn't everything. When we're in here, this is important. But I care more about your schools. I care more about how you treat your parents. I care more about how you treat your neighbor. Let's talk about other things than wrestling. When we're doing wrestling, this is what we're doing. It is important. But let's not make it everything. And if you lose a match, let's learn from it. Let's not yell at you. It's like, let's just get better at life. It probably sounds fake and cheesy, but I really am a huge believer in that. So that's what I try to preach to my Crazy Goats, and I want to build it. It's how I support my family. I make that very clear to all my people. But I think if you come to 1 week of one of my practices, the proof's in the pudding. Let's get better. and it doesn't have to be psychotic.
Okay, you said that today. You raised your voice. You didn't even yell. You raised your voice and you're like, hey, I'm not a psychopath.
Yeah.
That was my favorite part, actually. Yeah. Like, besides all the super meticulous, boring, necessary, get your head and hands in the way.
I was losing the kids a little, so that's why I raised my voice.
It was awesome.
To wake them up.
But when people watch this interview, they might think you're a bit of a psychopath because we got a Penn State hat on. we got Explain that to people, please. I know you. I know your history. I know you're a two-time state champ at Reedy High School here in Columbus. Why a Penn State hat? Why an Ohio State shirt? Why?
I grew up in Columbus. I'm the biggest Ohio State football fan. Huge Buckeye
Even against
fan.
Penn State?
Yes.
Well, that's weird.
And I'm going to get killed by my Penn State friends if they ever watch this.
They won't. They won't. Don't worry.
So, but
They might.
But when I was a junior and senior in high school, all the best kids from Ohio were going to Penn State. Penn State had just entered the Big Ten, and Ohio State hosted the Big Ten tournament.
93, I was there. Ranneman and Coleman won it. Or Ranneman and Rex Holman won it.
Yeah. So, Kerry Colott was a freshman. You had Troy, who was my head coach, wrestling. I always liked the logo. I mean, when you're young, it's just this or that, but they offered me a full ride, and I went to Penn State, and I followed guys like Eddie Jane and Clinton Musser, who were like everything in the state of Ohio. And you had Glenn Pritzoff there and Biff Walleye. Just tons. They had #1 recruiting class like 2-3 years in a row, and they were every year a top 6, top 7 team. And I was like, that's where I want to go wrestle. So I spent 5 years at Penn State wrestling. They asked me to coach. I spent 3 years coaching there. And I mean, you spend 8 years of your life somewhere. I'm a Penn State alum, Penn State coach, captain, All-American. Like, it's my blood. But after 8 years, you move back home, coach at Ohio State. It's where you grew up. It's just Ohio State's part of my life.
The Norman thing. Who recruited you to Norman?
Sammy Henson.
Sammy brought you up there.
Sammy and I coached at Penn State for 2 or 3 years together. And then that was a whole nother situation. But he got hired to be the head assistant out there, and they said, if you do good, you'll become the next head coach. Hire who you'd want to hire. He hired me and Mike Leitner. They went from pretty bad to top 5 in the country the first year. And we raised it. Well, I'm not going to get into all that.
They were good.
Anyways,
they were real good.
Sammy recruited me out there. We did a heck of a job while we were there.
Yeah.
And then I came back to Ohio State and won the national championship. But I mean, I was born a Buckeye.
Yeah.
But I chose to go get my degree and wrestle for Penn State and coach there. And so my wife makes fun of me. I either have Penn State, Ohio State, or Crazy Goat stuff on. Like, I own no other clothes. She tries to buy me a button down, and I won't wear it. It's a sports team, Penn State or Ohio State.
Okay, we got Logan down there. We're going to go back down and catch some technique. Coach, you got anything else for me?
No. I finally got you gear, which I'm happy about.
I appreciate that.
Better rep it.
Yeah, no, well, definitely the polo at school.
Yeah.
So. Coach, thank you for the time. Great technique today. Keep going. We're Crazy, the Goats. How do we follow on social media? Like, what would we follow?
Crazy Goats is on Facebook.
And then, I posted a bunch of stuff at you today on Twitter and
I believe
Instagram.
we're on Twitter. I have a parent who does it. I'm not on Twitter.
You are.
I am, but I lost my password like 6 years ago. And Twitter. Listen, I was coaching when I set it up. I was coaching, I think, in Oklahoma. And when you leave a university, you lose your email.
Yeah.
And you can't call them and say, "Hey, open my old email up." So with Twitter, to reset it, you have to
you have to make a new account.
Get it. So it's just like,
make a new account.
I haven't been on Twitter and I don't remember the last time.
Coach.
So, anyways, Facebook. You can get all information on Facebook or me on Instagram. I don't even know what my handle is.
I posted a bunch of stuff at you.
Yeah.
Coach, thanks for the time. Great technique.
Thank you, man. Appreciate everything you do.